Princess Valeth Kinsera stood in the royal docking bay and felt her heart sink. She had requested a Kron warrior for her escort. The Kron were legendary across the galaxy. They stood 7 feet tall, with scales harder than ship armor, and plasma claws that could tear through metal. When a Kron walked into a room, everyone noticed. Everyone feared instead. The Galactic Council had sent her a human. The man who stepped off the transport shuttle was remarkably ordinary. He stood barely 6 feet tall, with brown hair cut short and eyes the color of Earth's muddy rivers. He wore a simple gray uniform with no medals, no rank insignia that she recognized, and carried no visible weapons. He moved with a quiet calmness that Valeth mistook for laziness. His name was Lieutenant Marcus Cole. His service file was almost empty. Former Earth military. 5 years of work, marked only as classified. No recorded combat awards. No famous battles. The Council had called him adequate for diplomatic escort duty. Adequate. The word made Valeth's lilac skin flushed dark violet with anger. She was the youngest daughter of Emperor Kintel, the vast ruler of the Etherian Empire. Her empire controlled 47 star systems and had existed for 12,000 years. She was traveling to negotiate a peace treaty with the Velkaroth Dominion, species that had murdered 3 of her older siblings in the past decade alone. This mission could end a war that had killed billions, and this was her protection. Lord Tyrell, her senior advisor, stood beside her and made no effort to hide his disgust. He was tall for an Etherian, with silver hair and cold purple eyes that had watched empires rise and fall. He had served the royal family for 300 years. "The Council insults us," he whispered. "This is a message. They want you to fail." Aleth said nothing. She watched the human approach and stop at the proper distance for addressing royalty. At least he knew basic protocol. "Lieutenant Marcus Cole reporting for escort duty, Your Highness," he said. His voice was calm and even. Not nervous, not excited. Just calm. "Can you even hold a weapon, human?" Valeth asked. The question was meant to sting. Marcus simply smiled. It was a small smile that touched only his lips. His eyes remained watchful. "When I need to, Your Highness?" Behind her, the handmaidens giggled. Lord Tyrell openly sneered. Even the dock workers exchanged looks of amusement. But Valeth noticed something strange. When Marcus had walked toward her, he had made no sound. None at all. She had heard his shuttle land. She had heard his boots on the metal ramp. But from the moment he stepped onto the polished floor of the docking bay, he had moved in perfect silence. She filed this observation away and turned toward the ship. The royal cruiser. Sovereignty was beautiful. It stretched 1/2 mile long and gleamed with gold and white armor. Inside, it held gardens and ballrooms and quarters fit for nobility. It was a flying palace, meant to show the galaxy the power and wealth of the Etherian Empire. Valeth had her own wing of the ship. Her chambers were decorated with crystals from the moons of her home world. Soft blue light filled every room. Her handmaidens had their own quarters nearby, and Lord Tyrell commanded the security detail from a station. 1 level below, Marcus was given a small room near the servant quarters. Valeth had ordered this herself. She wanted him out of sight. The other species on board, ambassadors and diplomats from a dozen worlds, could not see the princess of the Etherian Empire protected by a single human. It was embarrassing. The journey to Dominion Prime would take 12 days through neutral space. Valeth spent her time preparing for the negotiations. She studied Velkaroth customs, their language, their history. She practiced speeches and reviewed trade agreements. This treaty was her chance to prove herself worthy of her father's throne. She thought about the human as little as possible, but Marcus made himself difficult to ignore, not through words or actions, but through presence. Valeth began to notice him everywhere. When she walked to the gardens, he was already there, standing in a corner she had not considered important. When she held meetings with her advisors, he waited outside the door, positioned so he could see both ends of the corridor. When she ate dinner in her private chambers, she sometimes glimpsed his shadow passing by her window. On the 3rd night of the journey, Valeth could not sleep. Her mind raced with worry about the negotiations. She stepped out of her chambers at the third hour past midnight, intending to walk through the gardens and clear her thoughts. She found Marcus standing in the corridor. He was motionless as a statue, his eyes fixed on a maintenance hatch that led to the lower decks. It was a small hatch, barely large enough for a person to crawl through. Valeth had walked past it 100 times and never thought about it. "Do you ever sleep?" she asked. Marcus did not startle at her voice. He had known she was there before she spoke. "Sleep is a luxury, princess. Threat assessment is not." "Threat assessment." She laughed, but the sound was hollow. "We are on a royal cruiser surrounded by my empire's finest guards. What threat could possibly reach me here? The threats you don't expect are the ones that kill you." Valeth studied him in the dim light. He looked tired. There were shadows under his eyes and a tension in his shoulders that spoke of long hours without rest. But his gaze never wavered from that maintenance hatch. "You're strange for a human," she said.
No.
"Most humans are strange, Your Highness. The galaxy just hasn't learned our patterns yet." She didn't know what to say to that. His words carried a weight she didn't understand. Humans had only been traveling among the stars for 2 centuries. They were newcomers, children compared to the ancient species of the galaxy. The Etherians had ruled for 12,000 years, the Velkaroth even longer. What could humans possibly know about the galaxy's patterns? "Get some rest, Lieutenant," she ordered. "I will not have you falling asleep during official functions. With respect, Your Highness, I will rest when you are safe." "I am safe. I am on my own ship." Marcus finally looked at her. His eyes were brown and deep and held something she could not name. It might have been sadness. It might have been knowledge of things she had never seen. "You requested a Kron warrior," he said quietly. "Do you know why the council sent me instead?" Veleth lifted her chin. "Because they wanted to insult my family. Because humans demand representation on every mission now. Because the galaxy has gone soft and politics matter more than protection." No, Marcus turned back to the maintenance hatch. "Because Kron warriors are obvious. Everyone knows what a Kron can do. Everyone prepares for a Kron." Paused. "No one prepares for a human." Valeth felt a chill run down her spine. She told herself it was the recycled air of the ship. She told herself this human was arrogant and foolish, trying to make himself seem important. But she triple-locked her chamber door that night. And for the first time since boarding the ship, she did not feel entirely safe. She dreamed of brown eyes watching from the shadows. Seeing threats she could not imagine, the Sovereignty dropped out of hyperspace on the 6th day. To refuel at Neutral Station Omega-7, the station was massive. Built into an asteroid the size of a small moon, 1,000 different species walked its corridors, trading goods, making deals, and occasionally killing each other in the darker sections. Valeth had been to the station twice before. She knew its dangers and its opportunities. The diplomatic quarter was safe enough, protected by mercenary guilds who cared more about reputation than politics. Here, enemies could meet as equals. Here she could speak with Velkaroth intermediaries before the official summit. Lord Tyrell thought the meeting was wise. Her handmaidens thought it was exciting. Marcus thought it was a mistake. "The station has too many variables," he said during the morning briefing. "Too many entry points, too many escape routes, too many species with unknown loyalties. I recommend we remain on the ship." Lord Tyrell laughed. It was a cold sound, full of contempt. "The human recommends we hide." "How very brave." Valeth silenced them both with a raised hand. "Lieutenant Cole, I understand your concern. But this meeting could save the treaty before it begins. The Velkaroth intermediaries have information about factions within their own government who oppose peace. I need that information. Then let me go first. Let me assess the route, check the meeting location, establish secure exit paths. We don't have time. The intermediaries will only wait 3 hours." Valeth stood from her chair. "This discussion is over. We leave in 30 minutes. She saw something flicker across Marcus's face. It might have been frustration. It might have been fear. But it disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced by that calm watchfulness she was beginning to find unsettling. "Understood, Your Highness," he said. "Then I request permission to walk the perimeter during the meeting." Lord Tyrell stepped forward. Absolutely not. The princess will be guarded by Etheran soldiers, as tradition demands. You will remain with the servant escort at the rear of the party. You will not speak, you will not interfere, and you will not embarrass us with your paranoia. Valeth should have objected. Something in her stomach told her this was wrong. But Lord Tyrell had served her family for 3 centuries. He had protected her father and her grandfather before that. What did she know of security that he didn't? Do as Lord Tyrell commands, she said. Marcus nodded once. His expression revealed nothing. 30 minutes later, we walked through the crowded corridors of Omega-7. Valeth wore a hooded cloak to hide her royal markings. But she still drew attention. Ithrians were rare this far from their space. Her guards formed a protective circle around her, hands on ceremonial swords that had never tasted blood. Marcus walked at the back of the group, near the servants carrying supplies. He had not spoken since leaving the ship, but his eyes never stopped moving. Valeth noticed him tracking something to their left. She followed his gaze, but saw only a crowded market stall selling engine parts. A moment later, his attention shifted right to a corridor junction, then up to a balcony overlooking the walkway. Your kind has been among the stars for barely 2 centuries, she said over her shoulder. My bloodline has ruled for 12,000 years. I think I understand politics better than you understand threats. Politics. Yes, Marcus replied evenly. But those 3 individuals following us since Bay 9 are not politicians. Valeth felt her heart skip. She looked back again, scanning the crowd. I see no one. The Selkari male in the brown coat, 40 meters back. The Grund female at the spice vendor, pretending to shop. The masked figure on the upper level who has matched our pace exactly since we passed the water recyclers. Lord Tyrell snorted. You see shadows, human. This is why your species will never be trusted with real responsibility. Marcus did not argue. He simply kept walking, kept watching. The meeting with the Velkaroth intermediaries went smoothly. They were a mated pair named Kovoth and Selen, older members of their species who had grown tired of endless war. They gave Valeth names of enemies and allies within the Velkaroth court. They warned her about specific customs that could cause offense. They wished her success with what seemed like genuine hope. Throughout the meeting, Valeth noticed Marcus standing perfectly still in the corner. He was not watching the Velkaroth. He was watching the doors and windows, counting seconds between guard patrols, noting the thickness of the walls. When they returned to the ship, Lord Tyrell pulled her aside in the corridor outside her chambers. The human is becoming a problem, he said. He questioned my guard captain's patrol routes this morning. He asked about emergency bulkhead locations. He requested crew manifests that he has no right to see. Perhaps he is simply thorough. He is undermining my authority. Lord Tyrell's purple eyes flashed with anger. I have protected Etherean royalty since before humans learned to make fire. I will not have some primitive creature second-guessing my methods. Valeth sighed. She was tired. The negotiations ahead would be difficult enough without internal conflict. Very well. Confine Lieutenant Cole to his quarters during official functions. He may observe, but only from a distance. Lord Tyrell smiled with satisfaction. A wise decision, Your Highness. That night, Valeth found a datapad slipped under her door. It had no sender information, no encryption she could identify, just simple text and images. The first image showed 7 individuals, each from a different species. Their faces were marked with identification tags, linking them to a mercenary guild called the Obsidian Veil. The guild specialized in political assassinations. Their fees started at 1 million credits and went up based on target difficulty. Each of the 7 had been aboard Omega-7 today. Each had been spotted within 100 meters of Vilith's route. The text beneath read, They were not following you for politics. They were measuring response times, counting guards, testing reactions. They know your patterns now. The final line made her blood run cold. The next time, they will not just watch. Valeth stared at the datapad for a long time. Her hands were shaking. She thought about calling Lord Tyrell, but something stopped her. Something about the way he had dismissed Marcus's warnings without consideration. Something about the way her guards had never noticed anyone following them. She went to Marcus's quarters instead. The door was open. He sat inside, cleaning a small blade she had not known he carried. He looked up when she entered, but did not seem surprised. "You sent the datapad," she said.
Yes.
"How did you get this information?" "I have sources. Old contacts from before the council assigned me to escort duty." Valeth sat down across from him. The room was small and plain, nothing like the luxury she enjoyed. But it was clean and organized, with clear sightlines to the door and a small mirror positioned to show the corridor behind anyone who entered. "If what you say is true, someone is planning to kill me. Someone has been planning to kill you since you announced this peace mission." Marcus set down his blade. "The question is not whether assassins will come. The question is whether we will be ready when they do. Lord Tyrell thinks you are paranoid. Lord Tyrell has never fought a war he couldn't see coming."
What?
Marcus met her eyes. "Humans learned long ago that the greatest threats were friendly faces. We survived by trusting our instincts, even when everyone told us we were wrong." Valeth thought about her 3 dead siblings. All killed in situations that should have been safe. All surrounded by guards who never saw the danger until it was too late. "What do you recommend?" she asked quietly. "Stay close to me at the summit. Ignore protocol. Ignore tradition. When the moment comes, trust that I will do what needs to be done." She should have refused. She should have called Lord Tyrell and reported this conversation. But looking into Marcus's calm brown eyes, she saw something that her royal guards had never shown her. Certainty. Absolute. Unshakable certainty. "I will consider it," she said, and returned to her chambers. She did not sleep that night. She kept thinking about shadows and silence and a human who saw threats before they arrived. Later, when the royal recorders reviewed their footage of the crystal atrium, they would slow the moment down to 1/10th speed, then 100th speed, then frame by frame, trying to understand what they had witnessed. They never fully succeeded in the space between heartbeats. Marcus Cole crossed the distance to Valeth and her captor. His hand moved in a blur, catching the assassin's blade arm at the wrist and twisting. The motion was small, almost gentle, but the angle was precise, attacking the joint at its weakest point. The blade fell from nerveless fingers. The assassin screamed and tried to pull, Valeth tighter against her body, using the princess as a shield. But Marcus was already there, his other hand striking a point beneath the assassin's ear. It was a spot that should not have mattered. Every species had different anatomy, different pressure points, different weaknesses, yet the assassin's eyes rolled back, and she crumpled like paper in rain. Valeth stood alone in the center of the atrium, the body of her would-be killer at her feet. Around her lay 10 unconscious assassins, scattered across the room like broken toys. Crystal dust floated in the air from shattered pillars. The silence was absolute. She looked at Marcus. He stood at arm's length from her, his hands empty, his expression calm. He was not breathing hard. He was not sweating. It was as if he had done nothing more strenuous than walk across a room. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "are you injured?" Valeth opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. Her hearts were pounding so hard she could feel them in her throat. Her hands were shaking. She had faced political enemies and diplomatic battles, but she had never seen violence like this. She had never been so close to death. "No," she managed. "I am not injured." "Good." Marcus turned to survey the room. "Lord Tyrell, secure the exits. No one leaves until we identify all the attackers." Lord Tyrell stood frozen near the entrance, his face pale beneath his silver hair. His elite guards clustered around him, none of them having moved during the entire attack. They looked like children caught in a nightmare, unable to wake up. How? How did you? Lord Tyrell could not finish the sentence. Marcus did not answer. He was already moving through the room, checking each fallen assassin, securing their weapons, confirming they were unconscious rather than dead. His movements were methodical and precise. Empress Velka broke the silence. She walked forward slowly, her silver scales catching the crystal light. Her guards moved to stop her, but she waved them away. In 800 years of rule, she said, I have seen many warriors. Kron berserkers, Graxian champions. The finest assassins my own dominion could produce. She stopped in front of Marcus and looked up at him. I have never seen anything like you. With respect, Empress, I am just doing my job. Your job. The old Empress laughed. It was a dry sound, like wind through ancient bones. Human, you just defeated 10 professional killers in less than 60 seconds without taking a single life. That is not a job. That is art. Marcus said nothing. His eyes continued to scan the room, watching doors and windows, counting the Vel'Korath soldiers, assessing threats that might still emerge. One of the fallen assassins groaned and stirred. Marcus was beside her in an instant, pressing a point on her neck that returned her to unconsciousness. The motion was almost gentle. You could have killed them, Valeth said. Her voice was steadier now. Any of them. All of them? Yes. Why didn't you? Marcus looked at her. For a moment she saw something behind those calm brown eyes. Something old and tired and very, very human. Because dead assassins cannot tell us who sent them, he said. And because killing should always be the last choice, not the first. The next few hours were chaos. Vel'Korath, security flooded the atrium, followed by delegations from every major species. The unconscious assassins were taken for interrogation. Witnesses were interviewed. The summit was suspended while investigations began. Valeth sat in a secure room, surrounded by guards who now looked at her human escort with something approaching fear. Lord Tyrell paced back and forth, his composure completely shattered. This is impossible, he kept saying. One human. Against 10 trained killers? Impossible. Marcus sat in the corner, cleaning his hands with a cloth. He had small cuts on his knuckles from the fight. They were his only injuries, Lord Tyrell, Valeth said quietly. Enough. But Your Highness, we must understand. We must analyze. How did he move so fast? How did he know where to strike? Our scientists must study this. Our military must learn these techniques. This changes everything we know about humans. No, Marcus said. Everyone turned to look at him. What happened tonight is not new. It is not special. It is simply what humans have always done. He set down the cloth and met Lord Tyrell's eyes. Your species evolved on worlds of plenty. Easy food, stable climates, predictable dangers. You became strong or fast or clever because evolution rewarded those traits. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the alien stars. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We did not have scales or claws or poison. We were not the fastest or the strongest or the smartest. We were just ... persistent. We adapted to everything. Cold and heat. Desert and jungle. We hunted creatures larger than ourselves by chasing them until their hearts gave out. We learned to read body language because knowing when someone would attack could mean the difference between life and death. He turned back to face the room. You see what I did tonight is extraordinary? For a human, it was simply survival. Every culture on Earth developed fighting styles, ways to overcome larger and stronger opponents. We have been preparing for moments like this since before we had words for them. Valeth stared at him. She had read about Earth in her studies. A small planet, unremarkable in most ways. Humans had no natural weapons, no biological advantages. They should have been prey animals, food for larger creatures. Instead, they had conquered their world and reached for the stars. The assassins, she said. Can you learn who sent them? The Vel'Korath interrogators are skilled. They will extract the information. But I already have suspicions, Lord Tyrell scoffed. Of course you do. Who would you accuse? The Vel'Korath themselves. A rival empire? Someone who knew the princess's schedule in detail. Someone who could place assassins in positions where they would not be questioned. Someone who ensured the royal guards were positioned for ceremony rather than protection. The room went very still. Valeth felt cold spread through her chest. She looked at Lord Tyrell, at his pale face and shaking hands, at the way his eyes would not meet hers. "That would require someone inside my own delegation," she said slowly. Marcus said nothing. He simply watched. As he had watched from the beginning. "You cannot be serious," Lord Tyrell whispered. "After 3 centuries of service? After everything I have done for the royal family?" But his hands were shaking too hard, and his voice cracked on the last word. Valeth felt something break inside her. Trust, perhaps. Innocence, definitely. She had believed in the loyalty of her advisors, in the protection of tradition. In the safety of her position, a human stranger had protected her better than 3 centuries of service ever had. "Guards," she said, and her voice did not waver. "Take Lord Tyrell into custody for questioning." The guards hesitated, looking between their princess and the advisor who had commanded them for decades. Then they moved forward. Lord Tyrell did not resist. His shoulders slumped, and he suddenly looked very old. "I did it for the Empire," he said as they led him away. "The peace treaty would have made us weak. The war was necessary." Valeth did not respond. She sat in silence as the traitor who had served her family for 300 years was led away by the guards who had never suspected him. Only Marcus remained. Standing by the window, watching the stars. "How did you know?" she asked finally. "I did not know. I suspected." He turned to face her. His guards were positioned perfectly wrong. His dismissal of my concerns was too quick and too complete. And when the attack began, he did not move toward you. He moved toward the exit. Valeth closed her eyes. "I should have listened to you from the beginning. You listened when it mattered. That is what counts. Is it?" She opened her eyes and looked at the human who had saved her life. "Is anything about this night what counts?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "You will be a good empress someday, Valeth, because tonight you learned the hardest lesson leadership requires." He paused. "Trust must be earned, and sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who betray us." It was the first time he had used her name without the title, somehow. That felt more real than anything else that had happened. The truth came out piece by piece over the following days, like bodies washing up after a storm. Lord Tyrell had been working with a faction within the Etherean court for years. They called themselves the Eternal Flame. Nobles who believed that peace with the Vel'Korath would weaken the Empire. War kept the military strong, they argued. War kept the people loyal. War gave purpose to an empire that had ruled for 12,000 years and had nothing left to conquer. The plan had been elegant in its cruelty. Kill Valeth at the Peace Summit, blame the Vel'Korath, and ignite a war that would last generations. Lord Tyrell's elite guards had been paid to hesitate, to fumble, to ensure the assassins reached their target. The Obsidian Veil had been hired a year in advance, their payment hidden through dozens of shell accounts across neutral space. They had planned for every variable. Etherean guards, Vel'Korath security, even Kron warriors. If the Council had sent one, they had not planned for a human. Valeth read the final report in her chambers. Aboard the Sovereignty, as the ship carried her home, the datapad felt heavy in her hands, weighted with betrayal and blood. 300 years of loyal service had been a mask, hiding treason that stretched back decades. She set down the report and looked at the sealed document beside it. This one had come directly from the Galactic Council, delivered by secure courier. It was Marcus Cole's real service file, finally unsealed at her request. She had read it 3 times already. 37 protection assignments. 0 losses. Operations on 14 different worlds, against species that humanity had not even established formal relations with. He had protected diplomats and scientists and refugees. He had stood between danger and innocence, more times than the file could fully document. The Council had not sent Marcus as a political token. They had sent him because their intelligence services had detected the assassination plot months ago. They had analyzed every possible escort option and concluded that only one person had the skills and experience necessary to protect the princess, a human no one would expect. She found him on the observation deck, Standing alone before the vast window, stars streamed past as the ship traveled through hyperspace. Each one a distant sun with worlds that might never know peace or war or anything in between. He did not turn when she entered. He had known she was coming before she reached the door. "I read your file," she said. "Your real file, I know. You have protected 37 people across 14 worlds. Diplomats, scientists, children." She stepped closer. "You have never lost anyone you were assigned to guard, not yet." Valis stood beside him, watching the stars blur past. She thought about everything she had learned in the past few days. About Lord Tyrell's betrayal. About the faction that had wanted war. About a galaxy full of species who had looked at humans and seen nothing worth fearing. "Why do you do it?" she asked quietly. "Why serve people who dismiss you? Why protect those who mock your species?" Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that seemed older than his years. "When humans first reached the stars, we expected to find allies. We expected the galaxy to welcome us, to teach us, to help us grow. Instead, we found suspicion and contempt. Species that had ruled for millennia looked at us and saw children playing with technology we did not understand." He turned to face her, and for the first time she saw emotion in his eyes. Not anger or bitterness, but something deeper. Something like hope. We were not entirely wrong. We were new. We were ignorant. We made mistakes that cost lives and damaged trust. But we also learned. Every failure taught us. Every rejection made us stronger. And we realized something that older species had forgotten.
What?
That reputation is not given. It is earned. One action at a time. One choice at a time. He looked back at the stars. Every time a human protects instead of conquers, heals instead of harms, stands guard while others sleep, we write our story. Not with warships or conquered worlds. With moments. Valith thought about her own empire. 12,000 years of rule built on military conquest and political manipulation. Her ancestors had subjugated hundreds of worlds, crushed countless rebellions, maintained power through fear and force. The history books called them great, but greatness had meant rivers of blood. And here was a human, a member of a species barely 2 centuries old among the stars, who measured greatness in lives saved rather than enemies destroyed. "I am going to recommend your species for full partnership in the Galactic Council," she said. Marcus shook his head. "To respect, Your Highness. That is not why I protected you. That is not why any of us do what we do."
I know.
She smiled, and it was the first genuine smile she had given since the summit. "That is exactly why you have earned it." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the universe flow past. The sovereignty carried them toward home, toward politics and ceremonies and the endless complications of galactic diplomacy. But in this moment, there was peace. "What will you do now?" Valith asked. "After this assignment ends, the Council will assign me somewhere else, someone else who needs protection. Someone else who probably will not want a human escort." He smiled slightly. "The work never ends. You could stay. I could use someone with your skills as a permanent advisor. Someone who sees threats before they arrive and does not care about tradition or protocol." Marcus considered this. She could see him thinking, weighing options and outcomes the way he weighed everything. "Perhaps someday," he said finally, "when humans have earned their place at the table, and we do not need to prove ourselves with every breath, you have already proven yourself. To me, one person is not enough. One mission is not enough." He met her eyes. "We need to prove ourselves to everyone, every day, till the galaxy stops looking at humans and seeing primitives who stumbled into the stars by accident. That is the weight my species carries. And we will carry it for as long as it takes." Valith felt something shift inside her. Respect, perhaps, or something deeper. She had been raised to believe that power came from lineage and position, from the weight of history pressing down through generations. But Marcus carried a different kind of weight. The weight of a species still writing its first chapters. "The report said you have never lost anyone under your protection," she said. "That is correct. What happens if you do?" "Someday." Was quiet for a long time. The stars continued to flow past, distant and indifferent. "Then I will mourn them," he said softly. "And then I will protect the next person, and the next, because that is what humans do. We fall down and we get up. We fail and we try again. We carry our losses with us and we keep moving forward." He turned to face her fully, and she saw something in his eyes that she had not seen before. Not just determination or vigilance, but something warmer, something that might, in time, become something more.
We are a stubborn species, Your Highness.
We do not know how to give up. It is perhaps our greatest weakness and our greatest strength. Valeth reached out and touched his hand. It was a small gesture, improper by Atheran standards, but it felt right. "Thank you," she said. "For everything." Marcus nodded once. His hand was warm beneath hers. The sovereignty sailed on through the endless dark, carrying a princess who had learned the value of trust and a human who had never stopped earning it. Behind them, a peace treaty waited to be signed. Ahead of them, galaxy full of challenges and opportunities and moments yet to be written. And somewhere in the great archives of galactic history, a new chapter had begun. Not with conquest or war, not with fleets of ships or displays of power, but with a single human standing between darkness and those who needed light. Because in the end, that is what humanity offered the galaxy. Not strength, not technology, not ancient wisdom. Just the simple promise that when danger came, there would always be someone willing to stand in its way. One moment at a time, one life at a time. One human at a time,